Hello, welcome to the For Evansville podcast. My name is Adrienne and I'm here with Jonathan today. And we are just continuing interviewing people that we believe are not just living in Evansville, but living for Evansville. And so we are here to talk with someone today. Jonathan will introduce her.
Yeah, we're talking with Lisa Vaughan today. She's been in Evansville for a little bit, not native to here, but moved to Evansville and fell in love with the city, which we love to hear. She's been involved in a number of nonprofits. She told us something like 26 nonprofits
Yes,
plus, at one time or another. Yeah. So an avid volunteerer and avid volunteer, not volunteerer. But last year, she led efforts to combat food insecurity throughout COVID-19. A lot of people in Evansville were facing food insecurity for the first time and had never really encountered a situation where they needed assistance in that area. And so she was one of the people who was working together with others. She's part of the Junior League of Evansville and also just has relationships with a lot of other folks in Evansville. And so during that time, they sort of communicated, relied on those relationships, and just kind of did whatever it took to make food available to people in our community. And so we're really excited to talk to her and hear more about her story and how she is for Evansville. All right, well, let's dive in. Thanks for being on the podcast with us today. We're really excited to talk to you about just a lot of the different things that you've been involved in Evansville. But maybe just to start, introduce yourself, tell us who you are and kind of your story of how you got connected to Evansville, and just who are you?
Sure. So my name is Lisa Vaughan. I am a mother of two and wife of Dr. Jason Vaughan. He's an ER physician at Jasper Memorial. And basically how we come to this great city of Evansville. I'm originally from Cleveland, Ohio. I went to the University of Toledo, did my residency for clinical pastoral education in Toledo. My husband did his residency in ER medicine, and that's how we met. So, fun fact, we actually met at a death. So in the hospital. So he was the physician.
Not a funeral, but an actual death.
It was a death. It was a code blue, and he was the physician running the code, and I was the chaplain caring for the family and then anointing the body. You know, I mean, I'm not Catholic, but we would go and pray as the family would ask us to or things like that. Wow. And that's how we met, and we asked each other out afterwards. It's so romantic. It's like, that's how you start a relationship, everybody. So
I feel like I'm meeting someone from Grey's Anatomy or something.
I know.
No, it's not that sexy. Like that is not what happens in the hospital. Like everybody hooking up in the doctor's lounge. No, it's disgusting. That's not how that goes down. It was very much just a code blue. I walked in the room and he was running the code. It was all business. And then afterwards we started talking and we, went and got breakfast.
Yeah.
Nothing too crazy.
Yeah, so, that's cool. So what brought you guys to Evansville?
So what brought my point to that was we actually first moved to North Carolina after we got married. We courted for about a year and a half in Toledo and then moved to North Carolina and got married. And it was a small town, Elizabeth City, on the river, and it was really beautiful and lovely. But, coming from Cleveland or a larger city, I mean, they didn't have a Target. So it was hard, to kind of navigate in a smaller town. And so the company my husband worked for at the time was called Emergency Room Physicians. And they actually were staffing St. Mary's at the time with the ER. Okay. So He said, we like it here. It's really a beautiful town. However, it's just not our vibe. Like we need more things to do. So they transferred him here.
Oh, okay.
And we fell in love. Like we just, when we moved here, we were like, oh, we're going to live here like for 5 years.
Yeah.
Because we're newlyweds and that's what you say. And 15 years later and 2 kids, we're still here. And in fact, my husband was offered another position up in Jasper Memorial. And I'm like, I'm not moving. I love Evansville. This is where we need to be. This is my home. This is my family. Ohio's in my heart. Cleveland's in the center, but Evansville is that boundary, wrapping it all up in a bow.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
That's
So
awesome.
what makes you love Evansville?
I love Evansville because I think you get best of the both worlds. Mm-hmm. I think that there's something really beautiful about a small town feel that we have. Like a lot of people, the two of you, have been here my whole life. So my family's at. And you don't really get that when you live in cities like Cleveland or Chicago or Columbus even, and things like that. But so I kind of like that everybody kind of knows everybody, but we're big enough that everybody doesn't.
Yeah.
And
we have multiple targets, which
well,
is a selling point.
It's not really about Target for me, but I use that as an example of how small the town was. Target's not the be all end all, but I do shop there a lot. But it's more of the example. But think about a city of our size. We have a children's museum. We have a zoo.
Yeah.
We have an art museum. We have a Philharmonic. I mean, having a part-time Philharmonic in a town our size, huge. That's a big deal. 2 major universities, 2 hospital systems. I mean, I don't think people that are from Evansville, and I say this with a lot of love, give Evansville the credit that Evansville deserves.
I agree. That's part of why we do this podcast.
Yes. we definitely agree.
Right. I guess that's why you guys have jobs. And we have this beautiful view on the river. We're close to Nashville, St. Louis, Louisville, Indianapolis. It's kind of the center if you think about it. We are a hot town.
Yeah.
So
we agree.
Yes, we
agree.
do.
So, so you've lived in Evansville for a pretty long time. You've started a family here, and we're having you on the podcast because you're someone who doesn't just kind of live in Evansville and enjoy the benefits of living in Evansville, but you're also someone who contributes and plays kind of an active role in being a part of helping our city to flourish. And whenever there's needs or challenges that our city is facing, being one of the people who kind of steps up and responds to those. Could you tell us a little bit about, some of the ways that you've done that, and maybe kind of what brought you to have that kind of mentality and approach to our city?
Well, I mean, first of all, I think some of it just comes from having a servant leadership situation. I mean, I was, I'm faith oriented, and they're very much in the Christian faith as a servicehood of serving those around you, being in community. So I think that a little background about me, not to get overly deep, but I came from a very abusive home. We were poverty ridden, but for those that might not understand, I feel sometimes weird always using that as a guide, but it needs to be said. But a 2x4 was the discipline of choice in my home. So it wasn't like the happiest environment. I had some really nice moments, but so I know what it feels like to kind of be left behind and kind of be treated that way. And church was my safe haven. The bus came around in the neighborhood, picked me up every Sunday, every Wednesday, every Friday. I could, youth group, I could go and explore and learn things. And then another thing that was a safe haven for me was the parks and recs in our town. I could go after when school let out in the summer and go to the local elementary school, and they would have college kids who were watching us and stuff. And we play kickball and stuff. And then they would do these field trips. That's how I got to go to the Cleveland Zoo and the art museum and do all these things. And so these after-school programs are so vital because they opened up a whole world to me that I didn't know existed.
Yeah.
I saw things on TV, but I didn't see them in real life. But the church and those kind of activities and the activities of the Parks and Recs school program, after-school program or summer program, we'd call it, really let me live and show me things. And it got me interested in things. And so I think I was always with my community because of those two things. And so I had that. I think what really started here in Evansville, though, so I've worked at a church since I was 19. So there's always been some type of servicehood with me.
Sure.
But when we moved here, I didn't plan on working right away. I wanted to get to know the city. And I started selling Pampered Chef.
Oh, okay.
To kind of meet people, right?
Yeah.
Because a lady down the street, when we the first month we moved in, had a party, and since we were new, she invited me, and I was like, I'll sell this and I'll get to know people, right?
Yeah.
And so what happened is I met Crunchy Wells, at the time was president of the Junior League of Evansville, and I really give Crunchy a lot of credit for my leadership. She's just a ball of energy. She's a fantastic person. She is so fun to be around, and she introduced herself to me. I was doing a little vendor thing for Holly's house, and she came by and she said, "Hi, how are you?" And just started talking to me like I was the only person in the room and asked me, I was telling her why I was doing Pampered Chef to get to know people. She's like, "You should be in Junior League. Do you know what Junior League is?" And she really set an example for me of like, you just need to say hi.
Right.
And you just need to talk to people. So I joined Junior League. And it's not any of the things that I thought it was in the best way possible. Junior League, you watch movies and you hear things and it's these women of certain class and their white gloves and pearls. Yeah. And no, not at all. Like so far from that. These are powerful, intelligent, driven women who believe in their town and believe in other women and want them to do well and want them to be the civic leader they want to be. And I just I fell in head first. I loved it. And it was actually the first place I've really felt that I could be my most authentic self. Not even the church, because the church was very much, you have to live to these standards and guides. And okay, that's great. But then you always felt judged, right? Or you always felt like you had to do something. And I still am very church oriented and whatnot. But in the Junior League, I was like, I can make a mistake here. And it's okay.
Yeah.
And they're going to love me through it. And they're going to have my back in it. And they're not going to judge me for it. They're going to help me grow from it. And how beautiful is that, right?
Yeah.
And so I really credit the Junior League because they're a development organization. And I learned how to fundraise. I learned how to organize a project. I learned Robert's Rules. I'm actually a registered parliamentarian because I love Robert's Rules so much.
Wow.
I'm that person. So I really credit Crunchy for making that invite, me for making the step to do it and not just blowing the invite off.
Sure.
And Junior League for creating an environment. And we have our things and we get to work through them like every human being organization in the world, right? But setting that tone that I'm a leader. I don't need to be told I'm a leader. I don't need to win something to become a leader. I don't need to be doing something this high wonderful. Because I always thought that. I'm like, I'm not that person. I'm not that person on my poster. I'm not that person I see on TV. And they're like, yeah, you are. You are. And everyone in the league is. Yeah. And that's what I love about it. We don't have shining stars. We have a galaxy.
Yeah.
And that's so I got to know the community because of my work in Junior League because they touch so many different organizations. And before you know it, I was up to 26 different nonprofits that I'm involved in.
Yeah.
That is not the number currently. But over time, I have, and at one time, but I have involved in over 26 nonprofits locally.
Yeah.
And got to know the town, got to know the people, and it's my social outlet. But more importantly, I really believe that you can't just be in your community; you have to be with them.
Yeah, yeah, that's really good. I think that aspect of kind of community and relationships as a way to get involved and contribute to the city is huge and is something that comes up a lot whenever we're talking to people. It's like, well, I got connected to this person and that got me exposed to this thing. And then we just started doing things together. Right. And that being for your city a lot of times comes from just getting together with people and saying, where can we serve, like you said. Yeah. So well,
and I've now developed that I really need to lead through relationships. I think everyone has a different leadership style. My style is leading through relationships. So for me, when I'm out volunteering, I'm not volunteering. I'm also socializing.
Yeah.
And I'm living my life and I'm doing good. I'm doing work, sometimes good, sometimes just okay, sometimes not that great, right? But it's not, for me, it's not volunteering, it's my life.
Sure.
And I think I look at it that way. So a lot of everybody's like, when are you going to get a break? I'm like, well,
this is my break.
This is my break, so I see it in a different lens. Yeah. It's not compartmentalized in my being. This is what I do.
Yeah, that's really good.
That's great. So what parts of the city would you say that you are passionate in? What kind of things break your heart in the city that you see?
Mm-hmm.
And what kind of things are you working on?
So, you mean more like issues that I'm passionate about in the city? So I'm very passionate about children in general.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously with my upbringing, making sure they're protected, making sure they're okay. I don't, because of my background, I do more speaking of that and support. I have a foundation that raises money and then gives it to Albion or gives it to, the different organizations in town that help children or help families and things like that going through those situations. So the YWCA and things like that. But I sat on the WISE board and do these also because the women in the Y that come through, a lot of them have children. And so it's a ripple effect.
Yeah.
So that's one thing that I'm extremely passionate about. But I also don't want to say I don't get hands-on because I'm involved. I'm a board member of the Boys and Girls Club, see what I'm saying? So, but I do protect myself because sometimes the situations trigger a lot of my childhood events. And so I'm actually very deep in it, but I also have a guard at the same time. And I feel that's important to say that that's okay. Because I think some people want to go all in and then it creates a ripple effect for them. We have to do really good self-care. I'm really bad at self-care. I'm like the worst person at it, but I preach it. So, do as I say, not as I do kind of thing. And then food security. Okay. And it's actually an extension of the problem with what I'm talking about with children. It really comes from that. We were food insecure in my home. I never starved. So don't get me wrong. I never felt like I didn't have food. However, I remember when my mom's car broke down, we had eggs every night that week. You know what I'm saying? Because she had to pay for the car to get fixed. So she couldn't do the groceries. And there was 9 kids in my family. Wow. So this was not like, we'll fix the car and you and I just won't get pizza this week. This was like, well, I got 9 kids to feed. So we didn't have the meatloaf and we had literally breakfast in some fashion. And I remember those things. And I remember the food stamps. And I remember the church bringing groceries over to our home. That's food insecurity. And I think people see food insecurity as a third world condition or a starvation. And that's not the case. Mm-hmm. It's very much of, is food available to you?
Yeah.
We really don't have an availability problem in Evansville that what I see. We have an access issue. So when it comes to food, that is a part for me that I really want to try to solve. We have probably over 80 something pantries that are registered with Feed America through our food bank and things. And then we have other organizations that aren't registered, but still are pantries or food co-oping and things like that. And not everybody can get to them. And that creates a barrier. So that's a food insecurity. And then you have use and utilization. If you're diabetic, you need to be on a certain diet. Can you afford that type of diet? And then, or the part of utilization also is if I hand you a bag of grains, do you know how to cook with it? Because I can hand you all the food in the world, but if you don't know what to do with it, or you don't have the stove or the pots and the utensils to make it, you're still food insecure because that bag is sitting there and you're staring at it. So it's useless, right? And then you have stability. Do you always know where your next meal is coming from?
Right.
Or do you only know where this week's meal is coming from? Or do you only know where the next couple of days are coming? Or do you only know what today's is? So I think we need to broaden our view of what food security is, and that is another area that I really feel passionate about is also breaking down that stigma that comes with it. I think people see pantries as, well, I can't go utilize that. That's for people who are just so down and out that they have nothing. Well, maybe that's true, but that's a stigma. Pantries are community food share opportunities, and they're for everybody. And pantries and these other food programmings are really to help people to weather the storm, no matter how little or large that storm might be.
Yeah.
And it's not pantries, they're groceries. It's food.
Right.
So we put all these terms to things and with all good intentions. But as you think about it, we evolve time, I have to eat, you have to eat. I don't know any human being in the world that doesn't eat, right?
Right.
It's essential. It's not even, it's a nice program to help people. This isn't helping people. Everyone has to eat, and everyone eats 3 times a day if they're lucky. So we need to start understanding that we are all part of the system, and we are about community food share opportunities, and we all play a role in it, because if you eat food, you are a part of it, period. Right. And that we need to get rid of these stigmas. And one, it really oppresses the person who might be in the situation more long term. Mm-hmm. But then it also suppresses the person who might have an immediate need situation, or maybe just a temporary situation that then they can't access these things.
Right.
So to me, there's a lot of suppression and oppression going on.
Right.
With it.
Yeah, I think a lot of people maybe experience for the first time during the COVID shutdown and stuff.
100%. I have documentation.
Being able to access, even just being in a situation where they needed some assistance to, like you said, weather the storm.
Over 60% of the people coming through the Harkey Pool line have never needed food assistance prior to March 2020.
Wow. Yeah.
So that's how many people, and the majority of that 60% are 55 and over. So a lot of them still haven't gotten their jobs back.
Right.
Because of the situation at hand, or business decisions that are now being made to conserve.
Yeah.
So it was huge. A lot of people did not know what to do and where to go.
Right.
And then on top of it, when the pandemic hit and we did the government shutdown, a lot of the pantries, who volunteers at these community food share opportunities? Mm-hmm. What age range?
Usually older, retired folks.
People right over that 60 age. So they're at the highest risk. So some of the pantries had to shut down because they didn't have the volunteer base. So we weren't prepared to take in the flux,
right?
And then also to
lose all the support.
Right. Now that the support wasn't lost completely, our food bank did a really great job. National Guard came in and helped our food bank, but then there were still gaps, and that's where I came into play. But not just me, with other people. So. Junior League, for instance, of how I've come to learn a lot about food insecurity, adopted a food security initiative about 2 years ago. And in 2019, started going out to get to know the community and be with the community, because it's easy just to maybe go and volunteer somewhere and then go back to your house, right?
Right.
Junior League really wants to be a part of the community in which we serve. So we made an initiative that we're going to help food insecurity within the Promise Zone, or and we wanted to serve children from K to 12. So we started going, and we wanted to say, hi, this is who we are. So we started doing free lunches, and it was really just a very welcome on us to the neighborhood, get to know us. It wasn't going to be the project, but through doing that, mothers were like, oh, thank you so much. Having this lunch on the weekend is so important. I mean, we were like, oh, this is the project. So we were doing lunches throughout the summer. And then when the pandemic hit, Councilman Burton called me and said, hey, we've known each other for a while. And he's like, is Junior League going to do their lunches during spring break? Because there was still an iffiness of what was going to happen with school lunches and things, right? I mean, I don't know about you, but I've never been through a pandemic before. So nobody knew what they were going to do and how it was going to work, right? So I said, oh, we're not just going to do, we would normally do about 200 in one neighborhood. I said, oh, we're not going to just do them. We're going to do multiple neighborhoods, multiple days. And we were doing up to 2,000.
Wow.
So him and I started talking, and he asked me like one more question. And I went, well, but Alex, what about this? And what about this? And what about this? And I've been really lucky that I've been serving with Andrea Hayes and Lacey Wilson and Robin Mallory and Casey Williams on Healthy Community Partners, and learning all this stuff and working with them as a Junior League rep and things like that. And it just kind of fruition that by the time Alex and I got off the phone, he was bringing his friends to the table. He brought, Candace and Tanisha and Courtney, and I brought my friends to the table, and, Hope and Cassie and Elena and then we got community leaders, and we had a meeting on Friday. So he called me on March 15th. well, no, he called me before March 15th. March 15th was the first day we handed out food. And that Friday before, we had we had the commissioner, city council, everybody on the phone. And we were like, this is what's going to happen. This was going to happen. Mm. And I organized a spreadsheet where everybody would start putting in their needs and stuff and what they were doing. So we could get everybody saying, hey, these pantries are closed, but these ones are open.
Right.
And I titled it Feed Evansville was the title of the Excel sheet. And then it's done. Yeah. So, and then I have handed out food every day since March 15th of 2020. Well, 11 days. I've had a total of 11 days where I have not handed out food.
Wow. Yeah.
So at first we were doing lunches, and Junior League was helping supply volunteers for the school system so they could keep handing out lunches and things like that. And then Tanisha, Candace, and Alex were doing lunches at CK Newsome. Junior League was going out and doing their lunches. And it just kind of kept evolving. And by the end of March, I got permission to do a pop-up grocery store and take SNAP. I had to call the state to get those permissions to use another organization's SNAP capabilities and things. And then we started doing pantry boxes and making deliveries. And then I applied for the grant for the Farm to Family and started bringing in thousands and thousands of free boxes from the government every week. And that's kind of how it came about. I mean, it's a phone call. So when everyone's like, oh, I want to be able to do something, you just need to talk to everybody. You just need to keep talking. And those gold nuggets come up in the grayest times.
Well, and that's what I love about your story is you're not like a professional like crisis response person. You didn't go to you didn't receive some kind of training to respond to a pandemic. It's your personal connections, your relationships with people in the city, your desire to lead and to help and to confront these different issues that led to these your involvement in these different solutions that somebody who's out there who hears this story doesn't have to think, well, I could never do that because I haven't received some kind of special training or I don't work for a nonprofit or something like that they can hear your story and say, oh, I can contribute to Evansville and help confront these different challenges too. And what I need to do in order to do that is to get connected to people and build relationships and be available to help.
And I'll even say, I don't even know if you need to do all that. I am a person. I'm a woman who saw somebody that needed food and I gave it to them.
Right.
It's really that simplistic. It really doesn't need to be more complicated than that. Yeah. There's nothing special about me at all. I just am talking about something that I feel needs to be talked about. Mm-hmm. And I might not know all about it. And I'm honest about that. But at least I'm putting the conversation out there for others to talk about it. And I think that's where, it's so simplistic to say hello to somebody. And it's so easy to look at someone and say, hey, I have this extra sandwich. Would you like it? Mm-hmm. And some people are like, well, that could be offensive to somebody. I'm like, yeah, but you're just being nice. You know what I mean? Like, hold the door open, say hello, shake somebody's, well, don't touch anybody right now. But you know what I mean? Like, I think it can be so much even more simplistic than just getting involved. It's just being aware that there's other people in your world. Yeah. I try really hard to teach my kids not to be scared of people. Like, I don't do the stranger danger thing. You all can call me later about that. But when we're in the grocery store, my daughter, which is somebody else, I want to be Becca when I grow up, will just hi, right. and most people will tell their kids don't bother them. I'm like, say hi some more. Like, people need someone to say hi to, and people need a smile. And I'm the annoying person who sits down, goes on the plane, and goes, so where are you heading to? Yeah, what are you doing? And if they don't want to talk to me, I know right away, and I stop talking. But we're people, and I think we make life about issues. And what I'm doing has nothing to do with issues. It has to do with people. These are not issues. These are human beings that need food.
Yeah. That's really good. I love that. And we all need food.
Right. It's
So
essential.
It's
We've
thing.
established that you need food and water to survive.
Right.
So that's, I think, getting rid of this, well, to your point, I have to have all this training. I have to do these things. That stuff comes. It just comes. And, what I love about our city, first and foremost, is that we have opportunities and have some really good leaders in our town who invite people to come and show up and give them the avenues to do things in. And sometimes you live in cities and that's hard to figure out. It's not as open, I think. I get new people that volunteer every week. And I do provide them training, though, because they deserve that. So we all huddle before we hand out boxes. I talk about how to go through the process. I talk about how to have conversations, and I talk about the judgment that doesn't need to be there.
Right.
How to have trauma-informed care with people and how to break down those barriers. And it's for a short period of time, but that starts the ripple effect of that, and it breaks those things down.
Yeah, that's really good. So how do you feel like having this posture of contributing to your city and, just kind of jumping in and getting involved? How do you feel like that's changed you as a person and your relationship to the city?
I don't know if it's changed my relationship with the city. I was around before. You know what I mean? I've been around for 15 years. I have been involved, like I said earlier, in over 26 nonprofits. And I'm not doing anything different. I mean, I guess what I find a little bit personally comical is that everyone's like, oh, wow, you're doing Feed Evansville. And I'm like, I've always been doing this stuff. I'm not doing anything different. I have always been around in my community. I've always wanted to be a part of things. I've always been a voice at the table.
Sure.
Maybe I'm the only one that thought that, but I felt that way, and I'm not going anywhere.
Right.
So for me, I don't feel my relationship has changed. I feel that it's the same relationship. I feel, if anything, I've just been able to, because everybody else was at a standstill, I think is really what was the difference.
Sure.
Everybody else was going about their lives and everybody else was doing their things. But because I was outside when everybody was inside, I was able to take a light and go, look here. And you all had the time to stop and look at what I was shining a light on. And I think that's the only difference that happened. What was the other part?
I was just asking, that posture of contributing and kind of approaching your city in that way. How do you feel like that has shaped you as a person overall? Not just Feed Evansville, but all of that you talked about, of just kind of having that sort of relationship with your city of, I'm not just going to be here to enjoy what my city has to offer, but I'm gonna bring something to the city. How do you feel like that has kind of shaped you as a person? Well,
even prior to COVID, I asked myself 4 things every morning. So every morning I wake up. Now, who knows me knows I am not a morning person. So I stay up until like 2, 3 o'clock in the morning. The only thing that's getting me up at 6 a.m. is I have to take the kids to school. And if I could find somebody to do that for me, that's a great Christmas gift. I'm just saying, a year of taking my kids to school, I will sign up for that Christmas gift in a heartbeat. I hate getting up in the morning. However, when I'm in the shower or brushing my teeth or something, I either listen to a devotion or something. But every day I ask myself the same 4 questions, or I give myself the same 4 reminders. I want to be the woman that I needed as a child. I mean, it's easy to dismiss the abuse I had as a child for everybody else. And it's really easy for people to say, oh, well, she brings it up, she's talking about it. I'm like, well, that's you. That's not me. I'm bringing it up because it needs to be said out loud because it's still happening.
Yeah.
And it's not acceptable. And I need to bring it up because you have some prejudgment of what I look like now. and what my life is, that's okay or something. So I don't use it as, oh, poor Lisa. I use it as, hey, we got to do something. But part of that is too, for me, is that I want to be the woman that I needed as a child. I didn't have that woman in my life.
Yeah.
My mother is she's deceased, had a lot of wonderful qualities. And I was able to grab those wonderful qualities and leave the other things behind. But I didn't have a mother. Okay. And I want to be that woman that I needed as a child. 2, I want to do better than I did yesterday. I make mistakes all day long. I'm going to make a ton today, but I want to learn from them. And I want to do better tomorrow than I did today. And then 3, I want to treat everybody that comes in my presence as if it was God. That one's harder. I struggle with that one a lot more. But at least if I remind myself, I feel like I'm halfway there and I can do a little bit better, right? And then 4, show up. If I'm sitting at home and I'm not doing anything, then I have done nothing. It's like that age-old joke that everyone's prays to God, let me win the lotto. And God finally goes, buy a ticket, right? So you can't do anything if you don't show up. I mean, Star Wars 101, Yoda, there is no trying. You either do or you don't. So yes, I quoted Star Wars. I want that noted that I am that girl.
That's all right.
Basketball, parliamentarian, and Star Wars. I didn't date a lot in high school. But I tell myself those things every single day, and I've been doing that since I had my children.
That's
and
great.
I listen to a devotion. And so I think how it has changed me is that I've actually feel like I've softened a lot this year. I'm intense. Like, that's putting it mildly. So I'm very like, yes, let's go do this and da-da-da. And it's like, and it freaks people out. Right. And I'm like, I gotta do that now. And I gotta make all these calls and, and then I take everything very seriously, like, I mean, I'm a registered parliamentarian. How many people do that, right? And it's because like, well, if we're going to do Robert's rules, we're going to do it right. And someone in the room needs to know it and we got to follow, And so I get it. I'm on the color chart of leadership. I'm a green, follow rule, do these things. But I think it softened me a little bit because I'm tired. Let's just be honest. I'm a little tired. So I'm like, I don't care as much. And 2, when people are suffering at a different level that you've never experienced before in your life, and you have to see it day in, day out, which is not something I've done before, things don't seem to matter as much. Different things matter. And I think we need to stop worrying about all these rules and regulations all the time and who's trying to get a box for free and who's trying to go to the pantry more than every 28 days and who's doing this, and just get back to some basics of, back in the good old great grandparents' day where you would walk over and get a cup of sugar from your neighbor. And when they needed to put up the barn, you all come together and help.
Sure.
Yeah.
And I know that sounds so like doughy-eyed and unrealistic, but I'm not the food police. You want a box? Take one. Like, I'm not gonna, like, that's crazy. Because you got to eat. You're a person. Obviously, I don't want to be taken advantage. I don't want people to treat me that way. And we all have to have boundaries. But have we made our boundaries so rigid that we can't forgive, we can't forget, and we can't move on? And I think there's something to that. And I think I've learned a little bit more of that forgiveness and understanding. And I've cried a lot this year. I mean, I hate to say this, but I've been called names. People get upset. And the thing is that it's not them. It's the situation, it's the circumstances, it's the lack of care. There's a lot of mental illness and things like that. And so you just learn to kind of, I take it personally. I'm not going to lie. I mean, I'm a very emotional person. A lot of people don't think that about me, but I'm very sensitive. But at the same time, I think I've just kind of softened myself that it's not about me. I need to take a moment and cry, but then I need to love them. And I need to love them more. I need to love them harder, which is so my personality.
Yeah.
Like I need to do more. So I think that's what I've gained. So I think I keep going through my 4 stains every day, but I think that I just like if anyone's doing anything wrong to me, I'm trying to not see it as they're doing something wrong to me, that they're hurting.
Mm.
And it just and that's the lesson I've learned in the past, but I've really held on to this year.
Yeah, that's really good. Well, Lisa, thanks so much for taking the time to talk with us today. I really have enjoyed learning more of your story and just your personality of kind of this intensity towards like loving people in your city and loving the city and building those relationships and stuff.
Thanks so much.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm really excited about all the work you guys are doing and bringing Evansville to light. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, so that was Lisa. That was a great conversation. She's so fun to talk to.
She was really fun.
I just love her energy, but also just her kind of go-getter attitude of just, she loves Evansville, but hasn't lived here very long. I think I've seen that as a trend. Don't you think? Like people who have moved here in the last couple of years, or well, hers 15 years, I guess.
Yeah.
They love Evansville. And so I feel like the Evansville natives listening to this should remember that.
Yes, take note.
That people love Evansville.
People love Evansville.
There's
They're coming.
good reasons.
Yes. Yeah, listen to those reasons. Hang out with some people who are not from here, maybe, to fall in love with your city again. Another trend, though, has been that a lot of the people that we talk to have fallen more and more in love with our city the more that they have found opportunities to contribute.
Yes.
And that their love for our city is almost wrapped up in this, almost like a sense of ownership in the city, that they've said, I'm gonna find opportunities to give of myself to the city, and the city's going to be shaped by that, and part of that love is really like a relationship to the city that is marked by contribution, by giving and being part of the city and making things better for other people. And I love how that came out in Lisa's story, because she was looking at things from her own life and saying, how can I help make things better for other people than the challenges that I faced? And I thought that was really cool, and that it's just all of her involvement in these different things is born out of that passion. It's not something that she gets paid to do or anything like that, but it's just, this is the kind of person that I want to wake up and be every day, and what I want to bring to the city that I love. I thought that was neat.
Right. And even just her story of like, I want to meet different people, so I'm going to do Pampered Chef because that's going to take me out of my comfort zone was really inspiring, because I think as an Evansville native, I have my routines and my circles that I'm used to. But as we've listened to the people that we are talking to, they have things that I've never heard of before.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, wait, why didn't I know about that? I've lived here my whole life, you know? And so just kind of that continual seeking of either knowledge or different people in your town, that sort of thing. I think that's really important to just continue to learn.
Yeah. And it seems like part of that with Lisa is her very like go-getter attitude. Like she just kind of jumps in and gets involved. And for me, I'm a very calculated person, so I don't tend to make moves without having some anticipation of how it's going to turn out. And so that was kind of a takeaway for me of broadening those horizons and meeting new people and connecting with others. Sometimes you just have to like figure out, how can I disrupt my routines and put myself in new situations and see what happens, kind of thing. So, which is not something that comes naturally to me, but that maybe I need to try to branch out and meet new people and stuff. So.
I would love to know from listeners if there's anything that's come up recently that you've done that you didn't know existed in Evansville. That would be something cool, or things that maybe we should try as a For Evansville group. Things that we should get involved in that maybe we don't know about. You can enlighten us. So you can email us at info@forevansville.org, or you can follow us on social media and hang out with us there.
Yeah, we look forward to hearing from you.